sector or industry to develop or to grow or to advance, there's two things that people look at, which is growth and development. Now, the tragedy for Kenya, and you see when you use the term creative economy, it's a very broad term.
Yes.
I'll focus on the cultural and creative industries, which form part of the creative economy, because this is the fabric of what our creative economy is. Cultural practices are things that we've practiced ever since we were children. The reason we eat, the food we eat, the way we dress, the way we do things, that's cultural practices. The creative industries are things that are actually meant to give you a reward. You're bringing creative solutions,
right, and
you expect a monetary reward. In the context of Kenya, there is an abundance of talent. Beyond reasonable doubt, there's an abundance of talent. What lacks is opportunities. And when you look at it that way, you can talk about it in an entrepreneurial way to say there's no balance between supply and demand. So those who are supplying into the market, anything that's creative, we are many. And every other year there's more of us coming in. The demand is there because people love consuming, whether it's fashion, whether it's film, whether it's music, people love consuming. So what lacks is the bridge between the supply and demand side to make enterprise. And that's why today I can ask you, can you show me one creative who is living in retirement and is thriving off benefits of pension or royalties? You will not show me anybody in Kenya because we've lacked that bridge. Now that bridge is something that should be done now, most importantly because we have a mean age of 19, which means our population is very youthful. And one out of every, if you take 10 youthful people, you find 5 to 6 of them want to have a career within the creative industries. And that number will only grow higher. So we need to harness it now. And the only way to do it is to have the right policies. Now, policy making for a long time in what I call the SHAPE disciplines, social sciences and humanities, for prosperity and economic development, have not been done in the right way, unfortunately, in Kenya. Since independence, we don't have cultural policies. Cultural policies are the ones that determine how you and me consume. Why is piracy rampant in Kenya? There is no culture. We've been cultured in a way that it's okay to pirate Moses music. It's
actually,
okay.
The point is, why am I buying music when I can just, you know, there's no culture of buying.
There's no cultural policies to influence the demand side to actually do that. Why should I pirate a Netflix account? Why is it okay to bootleg a DVD? So we've lacked this cultured thing, and now we're in a place where the market has normalized abnormalities. And so we need policies to correct that. And those policies will not be made by government, unfortunately. Government will make public policy that can only protect industrial policies. We have to agree as creators that we need to have rules of engagement. It's no longer business as usual that somebody will make music and Kekobo will decide on their own who they're licensing to collect on royalties on their behalf. The artist should be involved in that conversation because that's the gatekeeper of their rights. So to come to this current bill that Senator Eddie has put in place, it's called the Creative Support Bill. It's a step in the right direction. It's timely. The only challenge I see with it is that it's taken the same approach where the right policy making in humanities world over is done bottom up. You start with the people with the needs, who are the creators. You understand if they succeed, what are their indicators. Then you go and design this strategy that will help them achieve that. What we are seeing now is the opposite, where the Senate called for public participation. They got the views and then they have recoiled again to go and sit. So the top-down approach doesn't work for humanities.
All right, let's get your perspective on the same, Lizzie.
I'll piggyback on what Izzy said. If you look at our situation, the system is broken down. The structures are not working. If you look at like the biggest catalogs that make a lot of money in the world is catalogs of yester musicians or yester creatives. Here in Kenya is the opposite. If you look at our country, a lot of our older musicians who like have put up classics. So many times, Malaika, you listen to Malaika all the time. If you look at, if you go to Daudi Kabaka's homestead, you won't believe that that's the person who gave us Arambe, and all these classics that we listen to every day, you know? So as Easy said, it's important for us to set up these structures, but the conversation doesn't have to be in the boardroom. It has to come down and trickle down to us creatives who create. The creator is the most important person in this whole ecosystem. He's the one who creates, but some of them, we've come to a point where you've normalized the abnormalities.
Do you feel that we have gotten people also in government who can understand and articulate the issues of the creator? Because you see, there's a language creatives speak, there's a way they think, there's a way they understand the industry, but there's always been a complaint that this particular representative is not, like what you were mentioning, is not really getting what we are saying. Yeah, so they will come back to you to help them you know, like make a particular strategy work, as opposed to them having the know-how to do what is needed to be done.
I don't think the creative side is respected, in terms of, like, when I say respected, in the sense that even when they're giving responsibility to a lot of these people, use our department of creatives usually is a dumping ground. Hold there while we try to find a spot for you, you know? And that's not respect, that's disrespecting our craft. You get my point? Yeah. So we need to have a situation whereby government looks at it in the sense that we want to put in a professional who knows, who understands what are the needs of the artists, you know? I know we have some artists that are already legislators, they're all in parliament and stuff, but some of them, they are creatives, yes, but also it doesn't necessarily mean just because you are a successful creative, you are a better manager of the craft, you know? Right. So I just think it needs to be a conversation. As Easy said, we have to sit down and find a solution, find mechanisms, have a sober conversation in regards to making sure, like, the structures that are there for our industry are the right structures. Look at, like, for example, royalty collection in this country. You can have a hit and still be very broke. You know, we have a lot of musicians, a lot of creatives, from Yester musicians, Kalamashaka, talking about all these guys when it comes to a situation whereby their catalog is so relevant. It's being played, it's on rotation, but the money doesn't trickle down to these guys. So it tells you there's something wrong with the CMOs, which we know is a fact. The CMO system in this country is a thuggery situation. Okay. So we need to find a solution towards that, so that the artists can understand also, like, your music or whatever you create right now, it's your pension.
Okay. Let's take a look at the trip that creatives had with the president, to the delegation to the US, while they, they went to Hollywood, the Washington, Hollywood, also Atlanta, I beg your pardon, Atlanta, Tyler Perry Studios. Do you feel that was a step to establish something core in the entertainment industries? I mean, there were very controversial views on this same, but I would like to get your perspective of someone who is deeply in the industry.
First things first, and I'll speak as two people. I'll speak as a practitioner and a professional, because for a long time, like you said, creatives speak a different language, and I made a deliberate effort to move from being a practitioner to also be a professional. So I understand both worlds. And the first thing I'd like to say is the Kenya Kwanza administration. I want to thank them for two things. When I read the manifesto of President Ruto and his current government, and I saw that the creative economy was a fifth pillar in the plans that he had for government, that was very refreshing, because since independence, we've never had that. So it sort of opened a door to say that we know there is value in the creative economy, we probably just don't know how to tap into it. The second thing that I acknowledge that the government has done is, in the executive order number 2, they went ahead and created a state department for creative economy. A lot of creatives don't know that there is a state department. What a state department does, it essentially moves us from seeking to be represented to actually being part of the cake. So when a cake is being cut, and the cake is being cut during the finance bill, during the planning, now they actually have to plan for that state department, for development, for recurrent expenditures. And so that ensures that every financial year, the creative industry is looked after. Now that's at executive level, and that we must say was a really good thing. To that point of that State Department, to date it's not been unbundled. So we only have a principal secretary, but below him we don't have a policy department, a research department, the instruments that would be used to make that place functional. So you can see with this government the intention is there. What has lacked is the bridge between the state and the actual creatives. And to our own letdown, what we have failed to do in the creative industry is organizing professional bodies. And I'll give you an example of the transport industry. The transport industry used to be very chaotic. You would wake up one day in the stage, Iruti may strike, I'm a fairly 200. Until they found strength in organizing in circles. And now you can't just decide this particular matatu can't decide to charge 200. If you belong to Embasava Circle, it's one. So when they professionalize and they organize at industry level, it was easier for them to engage with the transport ministry, and so the public policies that were made protected the Sacco enterprise, and you see what it has done. You go to the Juakali sector, it's the same thing. The biggest challenge I want to give myself, Muzi, and all creatives is let us find a way to organize our professional bodies so that they become the voices that sit and represent our interests and needs in this. When the president went to the US, again, it shows you from the executive there is an intention. Intention doesn't necessarily mean execution is done in the right way. That trip was very important because what it did, and I remember the dinner in the evening when the president said, finally he has understood what it means to have a blockbuster film industry. And from that, he came back home, and recently he created something within his office, which is called the Office of the Special Programs and the Creative Economies, headed by Dennis Itumbi. And I know from what Dennis has shared with us is that the intention is to create an environment where that office works as coordination, where there's industry, there's ministry, and there's all this. So on that side, I think what the president saw inspired him to create something that is right next to him, and Dennis can be reporting to him on the progress. And I know there is works to create something similar to what Tyler Perry has in Kenya.
All right, so we'll take a short break on that, and Muzi will come back more with this conversation. Do stay with us. We'll be back with more of this.
People Daily, we believe small actions lead to monumental changes. As we commit to a greener future,